Two people can earn the exact same paycheck, live in the exact same city, start at the exact same age, and 15 years later, one of them is sitting on roughly $250,000 the other one doesn't have. Nothing separates them except one decision: the car they drove. I spent years tracking why that gap actually happens, and it's not what most people assume. Pull up your own bank statement for a second. If you break it down, your money is really only going into 5 places: housing, taxes, utilities, daily spending, and transportation. Most people assume the biggest drain is rent or taxes or inflation. But when you actually run the numbers, one category stands out from the rest. It's the only one that combines high interest debt, guaranteed daily depreciation, and constant pressure to replace it every few years. It's sitting in your driveway right now. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Americans were carrying $1.685 trillion in outstanding auto loan debt as of the first quarter of 2026, up 57% from a decade earlier. That's not a scare number, and it's not quite the all-time high some headlines make it out to be. It's a snapshot of how the incentives in this industry are structured. Dealers, lenders, and insurers all make more money when you finance a more expensive car over a longer term at a higher rate. None of that requires a conspiracy. It's just how the incentives line up. So today, I want to walk you through the model I built after tracking my own spending and a few other people's for years. It's a 15-year comparison between two very different paths a person can take with the exact same starting income. I'll show you the math behind both, and I'll tell you my own story, including the year I almost undid all of it over a single truck. Here's the question worth sitting with before we start. Are you driving your car, or is your car quietly driving your financial life? The test case. Here's the exact person we're modeling. They're somewhere between 18 and 25, which means they're sitting on the single biggest financial advantage there is: a 30-year runway for compounding. Their credit isn't great yet, somewhere in the 580 to 680 range, and their cash reserves are thin enough that their whole financial life depends on the next paycheck landing on time. They need a car, and there are two obvious paths. Option A finances a brand new 2026 vehicle. According to Kelley Blue Book, the average new car transaction price as of June 2026 is $49,758, 10% down, a 60-month loan. Experian's most recent data puts the average new car APR at 6.39% overall, but that number moves a lot with credit. Near-prime borrowers in the 601 to 660 range average closer to 9.6%. Drop into the subprime tier, 501 to 600, and that climbs to around 13%, with deep subprime borrowers paying 16% or more. On top of that, the loan requires full coverage insurance for its entire term. Option B skips the new car smell and buys something 3 to 4 years old, a 2022 or 2023 model, sitting in what's usually called the depreciation sweet spot. Recent market data puts the average used car price around $25,000 to $25,400. It's cheaper not because it's worse, but because someone else already absorbed that first steep depreciation hit. From there, every extra dollar of freed up cash flow goes straight into the S&P 500. We're tracking both paths over 15 years, 3 full 5-year loan cycles back to back, and roughly the minimum window the market needs to complete a full growth cycle. If you have a car payment right now, the next part is worth paying close attention to. Phase 1, where the money starts leaking. This covers month 0 through month 12. The pitch behind option A is simple. A new car is a new asset. The spreadsheet tells a different story. The moment that $49,758 car leaves the lot, it loses 15 to 20% of its value instantly, somewhere between $7,400 and $9,900, gone before the first payment is even due. If option A loses their job and tries to sell the car to get out from under it, the down payment, the front-loaded interest, and that depreciation gap together wipe out more than a quarter of their starting net worth almost immediately. Then there's liquidity. Experian's Q1 2026 data puts the average new car payment at $770 a month. Insurance stacks on top of that. Value Penguin's research shows full coverage for an 18-year-old averages $599 a month, easing down toward the mid-200s by age 25, as insurers see more driving history. Take the higher end of that range and you're at more than $1,300 a month in fixed, unavoidable cost. The margin of error for a medical bill or a layoff is close to zero. My Camry story. That margin of error isn't a spreadsheet number to me. I lived a version of this at 19 in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio. My total budget was $6,000. I was working part-time at Home Depot, $13 an hour, and after taxes, my paycheck came out to just over $1,000 a month. My first check went almost entirely to catching up on a phone bill I'd let slide for 2 months. Not exactly the responsible adult moment I'd pictured. I bought a used 2011 Toyota Camry, put $2,000 down, and financed the remaining $4,000. This wasn't about wanting something nice. Without a car, I couldn't get to work, and without work, I couldn't eat. The dealer priced that in. My $4,000 loan carried an 18.9% APR. The payment itself was only $150 a month, but because I now had a loan on record, State Farm charged me $280 a month for mandatory full coverage. One Tuesday in February, the alternator died in a Walmart parking lot. I had $43 to my name until my next paycheck. I remember calling my mom from the parking lot, not asking her for money, just needing someone to tell me it was going to be fine. It wasn't fine, not immediately. I had to borrow $180 from a coworker and pay him back over 3 weeks, $5 at a time, which was its own kind of humiliating at 19. That's what a zero-margin liquidity black hole actually feels like from the inside. Not a scary statistic, a parking lot, a dead alternator, and $43. Back in the model, this is roughly where Option A's new car excitement peaks, somewhere around month 3 to 6, before the emotional payoff drops off sharply. Option B's portfolio is still flat at this stage. The compounding hasn't started yet, but Option B has kept something more valuable than a nicer car, full liquidity, and no exposure to a single bad month. Option A, meanwhile, is sitting on real tail risk. According to Edmunds' second quarter 2026 data, nearly 30% of new vehicle trade-ins carry negative equity, averaging $6,884 underwater. A total loss accident without gap insurance wipes that person out instantly. A third path worth naming. Call. Before we go further, it's worth naming a third outcome, because the real world rarely splits as cleanly as A versus B. Call this Option C. Someone who does the smart thing on the car, buys the older, cheaper vehicle, but never actually redirects the savings anywhere. The $600 a month they're not spending on a car payment doesn't disappear into a brokerage account. It goes to takeout, subscriptions, a slightly nicer apartment. Nothing reckless, nothing dramatic, just absorbed into daily life. 15 years later, Option C has avoided the worst of Option A's damage. No repossession risk, no negative equity spiral, but they also don't have Option B's $248,000. They're financially fine, just not financially ahead. This is actually the most common outcome I've seen in practice. The car decision alone doesn't build wealth. It just removes one obstacle. The redirection of that cash flow is the part that actually does the work, and that's a much harder habit to maintain than a single smart purchase. The Model Y actually built core satellite. This is the part of the framework I'd ask you to pay closest attention to, because it's less about avoiding a bad decision and more about a structure you can actually run for the next 15 years. Most advice here stops at buy a cheaper car. That's necessary, but it's incomplete. It doesn't answer what you do if you still want the experience of a nicer vehicle sometimes. Here's the structure I use, borrowed loosely from options theory: a core position and a satellite position. The core is about 20% of your transportation budget. This is your baseline. A mechanically simple, unremarkable commuter car, something like a 2014 to 2016 Civic or Corolla, sitting right where the depreciation curve has already flattened out, bought outright in cash, carrying only state minimum liability insurance. One decision and the risk of losing your job over a broken down car is essentially gone. The satellite is the other 80%. Every dollar that would have gone toward a car payment goes into liquid, broad market index funds instead. Last summer, I actually used this. My old Camry, still running, paint peeling, is my core. But I had a third date with someone I'd met on Hinge, her birthday, at a restaurant downtown that required valet parking. Handing a valet the keys to a faded, rusted-out Camry doesn't exactly set the mood, so I used the satellite side. I took a small slice of the returns my portfolio had already generated, opened Turo, and rented a 2023 Audi A5 convertible for the evening. All in with insurance, $140. It did what I needed it to do. The next morning, I handed the keys back and got into my Camry and did the math on the drive home. I'd spent under $150 to get the entire experience for one night, while the actual owner of that Audi is carrying a $900 a month payment and the full weight of that car's depreciation curve indefinitely. That's the trade I'd rather make. Phase 2, where the hidden costs compound. Now back to the 15-year model. This covers month 13 through month 60. With option A, the costs stop being just principal and interest. Labor rates and taxes are up across the board in 2026, and over a full 5-year loan, insurance alone runs past $33,000. Because so much has already gone into the car, there's a pull to keep it just to justify the spending. The sunk cost fallacy doing exactly what it does. Then the real liquidity test hits. In years 3 and 4, the odds of a repair bill above $600 rise sharply, and option A typically has no reserve to absorb it. That repair goes on a credit card, where the Federal Reserve's most recent data puts the average interest rate at around 21 to 22%. And now the car debt and the credit card debt start compounding against each other, dragging the credit score down with them. Option A stays disciplined here, but only because repossession forces it. Their net worth still declines in a straight line regardless. Option B is trying to hold on to that roughly $600 a month gap and actually invest it, which, as we just saw with option C, is the part that takes real consistency, not just a good initial decision. The Bronco story. This is the point where I nearly became option C myself, or worse. At 22, I finished my degree and landed a logistics dispatcher job paying about $45,000 a year. My Camry loan was finally paid off, and for the first time, I had real cash flow. The urge to reward myself was strong, and I was fixated on a new Ford Bronco. I went to the dealership, sat in it, played with the screen. The salesman offered 72 months at $800 a month and said, almost word for word, "You've got a real job now. This fits your new lifestyle." I almost signed. My coworker Matt stopped me, mostly by accident. He wasn't trying to teach me a lesson. I just watched what happened to him. Matt had financed a $50,000 Chevy Silverado the day he was hired. 6 months in, he couldn't afford to grab lunch with the rest of us. He ate peanut butter sandwiches most days to cover the truck payment and the insurance. When layoff rumors started going around the warehouse, Matt looked exactly the way I remembered feeling at 19 in that Walmart parking lot. I drove my Camry home and the next day set up an automatic transfer in my Fidelity account. $600 pulled the moment my paycheck lands, invested straight into VOO. No decision required in the moment. I wasn't confident I'd make the right call every month on willpower alone, so I removed the decision entirely. Mathematically, this is roughly where option B's portfolio crosses the scrap value of option A's car, somewhere between month 48 and month 60. Meanwhile, option A is walking into what's usually called the trade-in trap. Most people trade in right around month 50, and rolling existing negative equity into a new loan at that point does lasting damage to the balance sheet. Phase 3, the actual numbers and the assumptions behind them. Before I show you the 15-year result, here's exactly what this model assumes, because a number without its assumptions isn't worth much. The new car price, $49,758, comes from Kelley Blue Book's June 2026 transaction data. The used car price, around $25,000, reflects current used vehicle listing averages. The loan rates come from Experian's most recent State of the Automotive Finance Market report, broken out by credit tier rather than a single flat number. The investment return assumed 10.2% annually is the long-run historical nominal average for the S&P 500, a multi-decade average, not a guarantee, and not what any single year will actually deliver. Insurance figures come from Value Penguin's rate research and are national averages that will vary by state and driving record. These are estimates built to compare two strategies, not a prediction for any one person's exact outcome. With that in mind, here's where the 15 years land. Option A has cycled through 3 loan periods by this point, trading in almost every time. Add up the interest and insurance friction across all 3 vehicles, and it now exceeds the combined sticker price of every car they ever owned. Their transportation-related net worth is effectively at zero. Option B's $600 a month, compounding at that 10.2% assumption, reaches roughly $248,000 by month 180. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that's close to $9,920 a year in passive income. Enough, on paper, to cover a lifetime of basic transportation costs without touching the principal. The gap between the two lands somewhere between $200,000 and $270,000 by year 15. That's the real cost of financing a nicer car every few years instead of investing the difference. Not a moral failure, just a trade-off most people never see laid out. To be clear, option B carries real market risk, especially in any single year, but dollar cost averaging over a 15-year window tends to smooth out most of that. 2 rules worth applying. There are really 2 things worth locking in from all of this, and the first one only has a single exception. Buying new only makes sense if the vehicle is actually an income-producing tool, where the extra income it generates outpaces its own 15 to 18% depreciation, plus financing costs, plus insurance. For most people in most situations, that math doesn't clear. And if it doesn't clear, there's one hard ceiling worth setting on any car you finance. Add up the total cost of ownership, payment, insurance, fuel, expected repairs. The moment that crosses 15% of your after-tax monthly income, that's the signal to step down a price bracket before signing anything. Where this actually lands. The problem was never owning a nice car. The problem is financing a lifestyle before your income can actually support it, and not having a plan for what to do with the money once it can. If you're already carrying a car payment, this isn't about guilt. It's about knowing exactly where you stand and building the core satellite structure from here, even if the core is the car you already own. If this changed how you think about your next car decision, I'd genuinely appreciate a like. It helps this reach someone weighing a 60-month loan right now. And subscribe if you want to keep working through this kind of model with me. I'll see you in the next one.